Hey guys, Jason Timothy here, musicsoftwaretraining.com, back with another video. And this is going to be probably a two-parter, maybe even a three-parter. What I wanted to do is kind of break things down for absolute beginners. Anyone who's never really dove into Ableton, never finished a song, maybe never even started a song, don't know anything really about sound design, don't know about music theory, don't know about all the effects and things like that. So, basic processing and stuff. So I want to give an absolute beginner a way that they can get started and actually create something that doesn't require all kinds of technical skills, and you don't need to know the ins and outs of this program in order to get started. Because if you try to learn everything at once, you're going to become overwhelmed and frustrated, and you're also not going to see anything to show for what you've learned. So this is a great way to keep you motivated by starting with the very basics and getting something done and then moving to the next steps. So in this video, we are only going to be using audio tracks. We're not even going to be using MIDI tracks. That means no third-party plugins, none of that stuff. We're just going to be using loops and samples to start, and then learning how to cut those up to build a song from it. All right. And look, this is not going to be a perfect masterpiece song, but what it will do is it'll start giving you an idea of what it takes to create a song, what kind of elements it takes to create a song, and some of the issues that you need to solve during the process. So by doing this, we can simplify to just using our mouse and our computer keyboard and the computer. So that is what we're going to do right now. We're only going to use stock plugins, and I'm only going to use 4 plugins. So if you understand the basics of these, then you'll understand the fundamentals of processing sounds much more quickly, and without a whole lot of stress of having to learn 100 different types of effects and types of techniques and that sort of thing. We're going to keep things really simple. The first thing that I would suggest is get yourself either a sample pack in the style of music that you want, or go to splice.com, which is, I am going to be in here grabbing samples. And what's great about Splice is I can, let's say, type in, dark kick or something like that. And then I could choose any sort of BPM. I could choose the key of different parts, loops or one-shots. So then I can kind of just go through and sample different sounds. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because what we're first going to do is listen to a song to kind of try to figure out what are the elements that we need for our song. And then this way, we're starting to get the essential sounds that we're going to need to build a song from. What I've done here, oh, also, by the way, what's great about this is, this does have full sample packs in it, but what's great is you can just pick one sample from 100 different sample packs. It costs you $10 a month, and you can get 100 sounds for that. So you can download any particular single hit, or you can download loops or whatever in all different styles of music, all different types of instruments. So it's really, really going to be a great way to get you started. And no, this is not cheating. This is easier, obviously, but everyone uses samples, everyone uses loops, and this is one of the foundations of making electronic-based music. So don't worry so much about it. In the future, I'll show you how you can build things with MIDI instruments and things like that. But for now, we're just going to use samples and loops and learn how to cut those up and manipulate them to our liking. All right. So first thing I would suggest is just find a song you like. I just picked a random song in kind of like a minimal techno style. So we're going to try to make something with this type of sound palette. All right. So what I would do first is write down the sounds that you're hearing. So I'm hearing a kick drum, I'm hearing a hi-hat, I'm hearing a snare or a clap, I'm hearing a little bit of atmosphere in the back. All right, so just some basic kind of melodic stuff going on. We're not trying to copy this song. We're just trying to get an idea of what kind of sounds are in this style. And we may not find, exact sounds or anything like that. In fact, we won't find exact sounds, but we want to get the basic idea of the types of elements that we would want. We could listen to more than one song as well in order to get a better idea. But and I'm hearing like little percussive sort of sounds happening. And you could kind of needle drop through. And you got like really low bass, so maybe like sub bass sort of thing. So you would write these sort of things down so that you get an idea of the types of sounds that you're looking for. So there's kind of like delayed stabs in here, the little things that go, things that are kind of really quick and then they delay out. So everything right now are all these sorts of atmospheric, but kind of quicker sounds. I'm not hearing like a pad on the bottom or whatever, although I probably want some of those sounds as well. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now we've got like a long synth sound. And then, kind of like pad sound or whatever. So we write those things down. That would be our first step. And really listening to the songs and figuring out what kind of elements they have. Let's go ahead and listen to this other track here. Always good to listen to more than one just to get an idea. So I'm noticing that the kicks are not like huge, dirty sounding. They're kind of, this one's kind of clicky, but all of them have like that deeper sort of sound, kind of rounded off, right? It sounds like little, almost like wooden stick sort of percussion sort of thing. So we're going to look for a little bit of dark percussion. Maybe little metallic sounds as well. Once again, we're kind of getting this idea. So what I've got kicks, hats, crash cymbal, clap, and snare. Those are things I'm going to want. I'm going to want some percussion. I'm going to want some stabs, something with delay. Definitely lower bass. Kind of synth pads, atmospheric pads, or maybe even like a drone. And then there's probably going to be a melodic area here. So there seems to be some sort of melodic movement. Not really sure what I would call that, but just melodic synths or something like that. So that's kind of what we're going to go for. So once you have that written down, then you can kind of get an idea. So now what you can do is you can do your searches here, and you could search by loops or one shots, BPM, key, the different types of instruments you're looking for. And also you can search by genre. So for example, since we want minimal techno, we might just go into that. And we've also got some really good sample packs up here. So dark effects, kick masters, pure minimal kick drums. So for example, we can go over here and see what we got. So what you're going to do is just kind of go through this and find the sounds you want, and then you'll go ahead and download the ones that you want. Just 1 credit for each sound. I think all sounds are just 1 credit, maybe 2 credits on certain sounds. And then once you have those sounds, you're going to want to download the Splice desktop tool. And then with this here, we could download the sounds that we find. We could just go to most recent and then find all those sounds. So that's what I recommend you do first, is kind of go in and, just get a couple sounds of each thing you're looking for. A couple kicks, a couple hi-hats, claps, snare, maybe a crash, and then the other elements, stabs and melodic bits. And really it's up to you. As you listen through, kind of reference the track you listen to, but also, keep in mind things that are striking your interest. So once you have downloaded your stuff and you've got it in to Splice, what you could do from there is you need to download it into your library, but then you can just drag this over into another area. So I created a techno samples folder. So I would just make a folder on your desktop. So then you just drag the samples from Splice into that folder, and that will be kind of your palette of what you're using to create your song. Okay, so next I'll jump over to Ableton. So once we're in Ableton, it's probably going to look something like this with an audio and a MIDI track. We're not going to need any MIDI during the process that we're going through here. We're just going to use audio tracks. So from here, just create, let's say 8 different tracks. Actually, what we'll do here is first leave this track the way it is, and we're going to drag in our effects that we're going to use. So the effects that we want to use will be our EQ. Let's go ahead and drag this in. And by default, I normally have 124 hertz cut. And I'll explain this a little bit, but our first track will probably be kick. We'll just do that. We'll just leave it standard. Then we'll drag in a compressor, and then a reverb, and actually let's put a delay before the reverb. So we've got that. And by no means is this all the effects that you'll ever want to use, but these are the 4 essential effects that you'll pretty much use on most tracks. So you don't need to learn every single plugin that you see in here right now. What we want to do is just get to work and get started on our song. So this is all we really need to get started. Now, obviously, this song's not going to be your masterpiece, your best piece of work, but what we want to do is we want to make progress as quickly as possible. So this is the way that we're going to do it. Also, if you are in this window here, this is a session window, just hit your tab key and get into the arrangement window here. And then I would set our little loop marker here for 8 bars. And you could do that by seeing down here, like right now this is set to 1 bar. If I come up here and go in closer, now it's a half bar. If we go even closer, quarter note, 16th note, 8th note, and so forth, right? And we could see right here at the beginning of the 9, that makes it 8 bars. So if you want, you could just highlight 8 bars and then hit Command L, and that will put the loop markers right around there. And then once we do that, we want to turn this loop thing on here, and this is going to allow us to work in this area where this will just loop around and around and around, so that we can kind of build our groove, if you will. So once we've got our effects that we're going to use, then we can go ahead and come in here and duplicate this. So let's just have 8 tracks. And we can name these separately if we want. So maybe kick, snare, hi-hats, bass. Oh. And to name these, I'm just hitting Command R. If you've got a PC, just use Control every time I say Command. So this here could be bass, say pads, stabs, and then we'll just do like effects 1, effects 2, and so forth. We probably want to get like maybe a crash track, so I'll just duplicate this and then change the name here to crash. All right, so that basically gives us kind of an idea of what we're working with. And we could change the color of these to make it easier, you know, so just helps us more easily distinguish one track from another. Doesn't really matter what colors you pick. I'm just randomly picking colors. There's really no rules here. Just whatever works for you. The next thing that we want to do is we want to take our folder that we created that has our samples, okay? So I've already dumped our samples in here. And once again, I just came into the splice tool, right? And then I just simply dragged over to the folder, all right? And that's what we're going to be working with in Ableton. So now if we jump back over into Ableton, what we want to do is we want to get the sounds in our browser here. So down here under places, I've got a lot of folders here, but if you're just using Ableton for the first time, you're probably not going to see this. What you're going to see is this add folder. And you're just going to click on there and then find the sample folder that you created and then just open that up. And now it shows up at the bottom here, although it shouldn't be that hard to find if you're just opening this up. But I'll put this at the top. And now all of our samples are right here. And anything that I want to bring into a track, I simply drag it in, okay? So that's how we're going to do this. And then all you really need to understand from this point is I'll teach you some basics on EQ, compression, delay, and reverb, and also just the basic cut, copy, paste, duplicate, delete, and a couple other shortcuts that once you learn those, you can actually start working on your song. So that's what we'll get into next. First start by turning off our reverb and delay on the tracks, which I probably should have done earlier. Because we're not sure what we're going to want to put this on and how we're going to want to set things up. So we kind of just want things clean. And the compressor and the EQ by default are not really going to affect the sound until we change some parameters on it. All right, cool. So now we've kind of got our categories here. Here's our kick, right? So let's start with a drum loop here and see which one we like. And if we turn this icon on here, this little headphone icon, then we can actually hear the sound before we drag it in. So I kind of like this here. So I'll just take that, and it should automatically make it a loop, which it did, and it automatically conforms it to the tempo that I have here. So now if I hear, it's pretty slow, as I can see the original tempo is 125. Let's go ahead and turn this up to like 122, just a little bit slower. And we'll just drag that out. Cool. Now we could use that as is, but mainly what we're trying to get out of this right now is just those kick drums, right? So what we can do, we'll just double click on this clip and it'll open it up down here. And now what we can do is we can actually automate some volumes. Okay, so we can just click this little icon here, and then we could come to either a mixer or clip. Let's just go to clip, gain, and then we can just, we could either click again, make little elbows, and just kind of turn parts on and off sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of take out the melodic bits. Another thing that I can do is I can just highlight parts that I don't want, like this. And then if I come up to the top and hover, I just hit the Shift key and then click and drag. And 2 bars is just fine for that for right now. So I'll just bring the loop to this 2 bars. And now we've just got our kick pattern here. So then the next thing that we want is something with a snare. So let's find a drum loop that has a kind of a snare in there. We could use that click sort of thing. Maybe I could use that sound as like a snare. That's kind of cool. So once again, I can just come in here and I could either do the volume thing or I could just find the part that I want here. So let's come over here and solo this. And all right, so it sounds like this is the sound I want. So I'm just going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it all the way up here to the title area. And then I'll hit Command E, once again Control if you're using a PC. Then I can just get rid of this. And now all I need to do is find where the snare would go. And the snare is usually going to go on the 2 and the 4. So as you can see, bar 1, 2, which is the 2nd quarter, and the 4th quarter. So you can just drag this here, and then I can duplicate this, just click on there and then Command D, and then I can just drag that there. So now we've got 1 bar of this. All I got to do now is just highlight, like so, Command D, and we can copy it all the way across. Cool, so let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, with this, let's pull out some of those lows. Cool, once we get rid of some of those lows, we got a bit more of like a snare-ish sounding thing. It's not really like a normal snare, but sometimes it's cool to have a different sound. So this works for me. Now I'm going to use my compressor here. And a compressor basically helps you model the sounds, give it more punch. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm just going to turn the ratio all the way up and turn the release kind of in the middle here. And then I'm going to use the threshold. The threshold is how sensitive it is to the volume of this. So the lower this is, the sooner it's going to affect. So if I have the threshold all the way up, as you can see, this is the threshold area right here. So the threshold has to come below that to start affecting the sound. All right, and now we can kind of get our attack. And we're really just looking for just that beginning sound. We can solo this. And we're going to want some makeup gain, so we'll click that. So we're kind of getting the sound that we want. That's enough attack. If we do this, it's kind of a thinner sound. And this will give us kind of a thicker sound. So right in here, and this is kind of extreme, so I'm going to now back off the ratio a little bit. And then I can bring the threshold up a little bit. It's about right. And then I can back the release off. This almost kind of gates it a little bit. It keeps it down longer before it comes back up. But this works for me here. And there we go. We've got something that sounds a little bit more like a snare. So once again, this is before. And this is after. All right, real simple stuff. And then we just kind of mix to taste. And if we want, we could actually use some of the samples. If you've got Ableton Suite, it comes with some samples as well over here. So it comes with maybe some claps. Maybe I want to try a clap sound. Maybe I need to just put clap. There we go. Kind of like that. I'm going for a kind of like a darker sound, so I don't want anything too bright like that. So I'm just going to duplicate this here. Or actually, I'll just Command T to create a new track. And by default, it's not going to have this here. So I'm just going to come over here and actually let's go to one that we haven't affected. Let's just highlight all these. We just copied that and then we can paste it in here. All right, cool. And then we can drag this sample in. And once again, we're just going to layer it on top of this. So let's just do this. Then we'll hit duplicate. That'll just make another. And then we'll do this. And then we'll highlight one whole bar here and duplicate all the way across. And then we'll mix to taste. And maybe we want it a little bit tighter, right? This is so let's try to shorten this. All we got to do is see this little icon over here. We can pull this back. And then if we turn off our automation, by the way, if you don't see this automation here, you just hit the A button, right? And if you still don't see it, make sure that this is turned off before you hit the A key. All right, once that's turned off, you'll see these little squares here, and you can just kind of pull this back. And if you want to get closer, we just use the this little magnifying glass tool. And then maybe a little bit more, so the further we go, there we go. There we go, something like that. So now I'm just going to take that, copy it, and we'll paste it. We'll replace this here. So just paste, 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 paste. We'll get rid of all these. And I'm just highlighting and hitting delete. And now I'll just highlight the two bars here and then hit Command D. And we've got cool. This has like kind of an odd note in here, right? This snare here. So maybe I'll pull this above this little fundamental that I see here, and we won't get that note. Hopefully you can hear the difference there. It's not as pronounced. Yeah, that sounds better to me. And once again, if you, I just forgot to grab a clap in our main sample folder here. So, you know, if you grabbed a clap, then you can just use it from the splice, obviously. Let's get some hi-hats happening. Let's see. I kind of like that shuffle. I think we could almost use that as is. And let's give this a little bit more movement with some delay. So I'll show you how we could use a delay. So we could just turn this on, and over here is how many 16ths of a delay. So 1/16 note would be the delay time if it's on 1. 2/16 would be 1/8 of a note. 3 would be 3/16, quarter note, 5/16, and so forth. This would be a half note, and this would be like a whole bar. So we could hear what this sounds like. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit because we don't want it too strong. And I'm also going to come here and put ping pong. Now you could choose whether you want it to go left and right in the speakers so that you hear it kind of going back and forth, or you can just kind of have it in the middle. This just adds a little bit of widening to the sound. So let's just do this. We'll keep it on sync. That way it syncs to our tempo. And we can also EQ the delay. So we could cut out some of those low frequencies and just play with the highs. But maybe we want it a little bit darker than the original sound. So it's a little bit more like a shadow. So let me just turn this wet dry up. And if you hear that, that sounds pretty cool without it. But we can experiment, you know, let's see what it sounds like with an 8th note. Not quite as noticeable. Let's try 3/16. That gives a little bit almost like an off timing sort of thing. That's kind of cool sounding. Quarter note is going to be pretty transparent though. We're probably not going to notice much there. So I'd say the best ones are either this one, 1/16, or 3/16. I kind of like that off timing, so I'm going to do that, but I'm going to turn this down a little bit so it's just real subtle. Just kind of helps with the groove a little bit. So that sounds good to me there. With the kick drum, let's come back up here. So let's do a little EQ and compressing here. We don't need to do a whole lot, but let's pull out, if we pull out the lower frequencies, you know, like 20 to 30 hertz, that just gets rid of kind of real low end mud that you normally don't hear. And it can make the lows above that kind of enhanced. Cool. We don't need to do anything really special because we kind of got what we want with the sample. That's kind of one of the neat things about using quality samples is we're already pretty close to the sound that we want. Then we could come over here to our compressor. And once again, I like to start with extreme settings so I can just listen to the beginning click. We'll set the release kind of up towards the middle as well. And then we'll just pull that threshold down. And this is not going to necessarily sound great. It's just to hear that first click. And let's turn on the makeup gain so that we don't lose volume. As you can hear, we get almost a little bit more of that click. And then with the tack, we can choose how thick we want that attack to be. Personally, I like it right around there. Just like I got that nice click to it. And then we start backing things off till it sounds a little bit more reasonable, even though I kind of like what this is doing. So as we pull back the release, it returns to its normal volume faster, so you hear more of the sound. If we turn the release all the way up, we really just kind of hear that beginning part. Okay? And now we'll back the ratio off a little bit. And then we can do before and after. Great. So that kind of enhances the sound for us. That sounds good to me. I don't want to really brighten things up too much, but that kind of helps it cut through a little bit more. Now with these two sounds, since they're kind of two layers doing, for the same purpose. So these two sounds are kind of creating one sound. What I can do is I can highlight both of these, just click on one, hold shift, and then click on the other. Now we've got both of them selected. We could hit Command G, once again Control G if you're on a PC, and that will group these two tracks. This allows us to put one effect on both of these to kind of get them sounding like they're in the same space. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just Command R, and we'll just call this snare clap group. And now what we can do is we can put a reverb on both. Instead of having it over here with the delay and reverb, let's just drag this. We'll actually drag the delay and reverb up here. And we'll just process both of these as one sound. So first thing we'll do is a little bit of reverb. We don't need that much, but let's see what reverb will do for this. So a few things that you want to keep in mind here. Keeping the low cut is probably a good thing because that keeps your mix from getting muddy. Pre-delay is how long this reverb waits before it comes in. So that allows for the initial sound to be clean before reverb's added, so it doesn't sound kind of muddy. So then the only couple things we want to kind of get is we could change the size of the room, the decay of the room, and then obviously the wet dry of the amount. Okay, let's just start by keeping this at 100, and we'll just turn the wet dry up to like 30%, so we could actually hear what it's doing. We'll turn it up even louder. And then we'll turn the decay time up. Actually, let's turn the delay off here. Great. So now we'll back this off. We'll back the size off. And now that we kind of hear, we can always do the before after. Right? So the reverb's muddying it up a little bit, so we definitely want to back this off. But we just want a little bit in there, just a little hint. It kind of puts these two things in a room and gives them a little bit more dimension. There we go. So you can hear the difference if I just solo this. So as you could hear, it just adds just a little bit of room ambience to it. And we could actually back off the decay a little bit. Just a little whisper in there. And that's really all we need to do there. Now if you want, we can check out delay and see if delay might be cool on this. Let's try the 1/16. I have a trick that I like to do with the 1/16. I'll turn the feedback all the way down. So we just get one delay. And when it's turned up loud, it doesn't sound all that great. But if we turn this down, it sounds almost like a little shadow and it kind of thickens the sound. Just in there, before, after. Just adds a real subtle thickness to the sound. So just those little details. And we already got an idea that's starting to kind of come together, as you can see. So that's the reason I'm trying to keep this really simple, is I want you to be able to create something that can inspire you, and also understanding how elements work together in this simple playing field will make it much easier for you as you get more advanced and start understanding more of the process of creating songs using MIDI, using third-party plugins, and all that different stuff. But if we start here with no controllers, we don't have to learn any sound design necessarily, and we're just using basic effects and our mouse and keyboard, we can still get a lot done. So I hope this takes away some of the fear and gets you right into the enjoyment part of producing music. So what's the next thing that we want to do? I noticed I didn't put like a percussion in here. So I'm gonna just duplicate this here. And I'm gonna turn the delay off. And I'll get rid of this. And let's find a percussion part. Let's go ahead and play this so that we can hear how it affects the sound. Let's just pull this little percussion thing in here. And down here, as you can see, each one of these is a half a note. Let's make this 1/16. We can do that by either dragging and coming in closer, or we can do that by right-clicking and just setting this to 1/16. Or we can set to something kind of narrower here. So that's like 1/32, and then I pull back up. We got 1/16. So this just allows us to kind of play with different locations. So what I can do is we can pull this all the way back to just one bar, just so I can get a basic idea. I kind of like that location there. So I'm gonna just use that there, and we'll turn this down. And as you notice, by default, I have all these at -6. That just keeps things from getting too loud. So if you haven't done that already, you could actually highlight all your parts just like this, shift, and then when you turn down the volume of one, it'll turn down the volume of everything. Got it? Really, really simple. So now we've got this individual part, and I'm just gonna rename this Perc 1, because who knows, we might have another percussion part in here, but cool. So let's try darkening this. So we've pulled out the lows of other sounds, and I still want to do that here. So let's pull out below 120. 130 is probably good. And all this area here, we just removed to leave space for bass and stuff like that. So that's really important. So now I also want to see what it sounds like if I darken this a little bit. And you can darken it by pulling down and getting rid of those higher frequencies. see what it sounds like if I just kind of pull down a different, just one frequency. And if we turn this Q knob up, it makes this a little thinner here, like so. So we can So I kind of like that there. It kind of leaves some of the highs, still leaves a little bit of the low, but we remove some part in the middle. And to me, I just kind of like the way that sounds. So this is just something you can experiment with, and then you can kind of move the frequency around to see what sounds better to you. For now, it's better to learn how to remove frequencies than add frequencies. That just leaves more space in your mix for the most part. All right, so that's the first bar. Let's try duplicating this, and let's find like another spot on the second bar. So and maybe even a third one. So let's and maybe this one here we can actually lower the pitch. So if we double click here, we can come in here, this area, and you just want to make sure you click on this part. If you're over here in the automation area, you're not going to see it. So make sure you click on this part here, and then you've got your pitch right here. So we can, so and another thing I'm going to do is I want to turn this part down, but I want to leave these the same. So the way I'm going to do that is, instead of turning things down here, I'm just going to click on the clip and then lower the volume on the clip itself. Cool. And we can decide if we want to leave those clean or if we want to add some effect to it. So let's kind of like that there. Once again, we've removed those low frequencies here, which is good. I've turned this decay up to about 2 seconds. We'll back this off just a little bit. If we turn it off, I don't feel like we need to add compressor on this one because I don't want this sound to be overly punchy. So let's just hear what it sounds like altogether. I actually want to bring the volume down just a little bit more. Cool. Now another thing that we can do is we can automate our panning. So we can maybe have this on one side and this on the other side, just give a little bit of movement, right? So once again, we want to hit the A key to get our automation on. And then the last thing that we click on is what's going to be set here as this red line. So we can take this and we can put this in. Let's put this in the left speaker. So let's do 15 here. And let's do 15 the other direction here. If you want to really tighten it up, just hold down the shift while you're moving this and it'll make it more incremental. And then this here, let's just get it slightly to the right. So all right, a little bit too much for my taste. So let's bring this back to about like 8. And let's bring this over to about 8. A little more subtle. Cool. Now let's see what happens if we add a little bit of delay. So and feedback is going to be how long the delay is going to be. And do we want that ping pong delay, or do we want it to be more of a straight delay? Let's keep it straight, and we can kind of dial in the frequency we want. All right, give it a little bit more movement. Let's hear what that sounds like. Let's try turning it up just so we can hear what's happening here. So it's pretty subtle, but I like what it's doing, so that'll work for me. Cool. Let's get some bass in here. So let's see what our bass parts are. Let's see, we got, I thought I had another bass. Let me pull up. Yeah, I think this raw sub, I forgot to drag that in. Let's see if I could just drag it right in here. Cool. Let's just drag this into the bass. Oh. Grab it and I'm going to turn this up a little bit just so I can hear. Okay, so this is just like one note happening, which can be fine. We can play with that, or we could even change the notes as they play, or we could cut this up a little bit. So let's see. What I want to do is I want to give this a little bit of breathing room. So maybe so I'm going to cut that. And I'm just going to drag in a utility effect just for volume's sake. Probably a good idea to use this as well. And I'm going to mono this. Sub should always be in mono, so that's important. And then I'm going to turn this up just so I could hear what's going on. Let's shorten this a little bit. And I'm kind of trying to avoid the kick area. So let me cut this here. Just Command E, and I'll drag this over. So we just got space for the kicks, as you can see. This is the only one where it's kind of landing right on the kick. Actually, that might sound good on it as well. Let me pull the tail off of that. So as you can see, I'm just already building kind of my own bass part just using a sample. So you don't need to just use a loop exactly as it is. And then here, as you can see, if we turn off our automation again, we've got these little fades as well. So we can kind of fade these, and there's automatically a little bit of fade to these so that you don't get a lot of clicking and things like that. But we can just do a little bit more. And just gives a little bit more punch. Let's pull that a little shorter. All right. Let me try to get that, the front end of that. Let me duplicate that. We'll do that. Let me stretch this out a little bit more. And timing is really important. So, you know, if you're on the 16th note grid, you can kind of move things around until you kind of feel what feels right to you. This just feels right to me. To you, you may have heard something before that I passed up that you prefer. And that's totally fine as well. That's kind of where we get our own personality. That's why it's totally okay to, you know, grab loops that other people created. We're all going to create something different from those parts. So that's what we got there. Now I'll bring this sub down to a reasonable volume. Cool. So another thing that I might do, since I really like my subs to be real subby, is I might pull this down here below 100 and just make sure that we're not getting any frequencies above it. As you can see, there's a little bit above the 100 range, and that's fine if that's what you want. I'm just kind of going for really darker. So I'm pretty much fine with that. I don't feel like I need any compression, but what I can do is, as you see, this wet drive is at 100%. If I put it at 50%, then I can have the original signal come through and then a more squashed version added as almost like a second layer, right? So what I could do is like maybe put this to 5:1, put the threshold kind of down, really quick attack. Let's say around 150 millisecond release, and see if I can hear kind of a difference here. Oh, and also makeup gain. So it definitely fattens it up. But actually, I'm going to back this off just a little bit more. Don't want it too pumped up. Yeah, just a little bit of thickening. That works for me. So yeah, you don't always have to have this at 100%. By having a lower percentage, it's considered more of like a parallel compression. And as you can see, it doesn't have to be very hard at all. And it just always, go back and forth comparing before and after. And that's how you know you're improving a sound and not ruining it. So now we've actually kind of got a note that's being played here. So that's something that we need to keep in mind as we bring other parts in. So what is this note? Best way to find out is look for the fundamental. So right here, if I drag over here, you can see the note that we're in. Pop right in that middle. It looks like we're in an A note, right? So that's something that we're going to be listening for when we drag in other, synth parts and things like that, or melodies. We want to make sure that it goes with that A note, okay? Because if we have things that are out of key, they're not going to sound good at all, unless you understand the reason why you would have what you would call a dissonant note. And sometimes that can be cool, but in this example, just use your ears, and if it sounds good to you, it probably is good. But with subs, it's a little bit hard to know if the subs are in key with the rest of your parts. And one way that you can check that is we can highlight all of these, and then we could just pitch all the way up 12 semitones, and it's easier to hear what note's being played. And let's turn this off so we can actually hear the note. Oh, it looks like that's the only one that I turned up. So let's highlight all of these and turn this up. And when we're in warp mode, if we want to really hear the best quality of this, we can turn this to Complex Pro. So now we can hear the note that's being played. And if I come in here and look again, it's just where it was playing right about, right about here before. Should be an octave higher at an A1. And if we come over here, there we go, A1, 1 octave higher. So that's how you can hear how the notes are working. And then you could obviously come back, highlight everything, and then bring it back to 0. All right. So now that we've got this, let's go ahead and copy this over to our full 8-bar loop, and we can add some pads now. So let's come over here, see if we could find either effects or pad sounds or synth sounds. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let's get some stabs in there. So let's drag in this. And now we want to hear what note's being played here. All right. So come over here. We click here just to get a bigger screen here with our EQ. And let's see what note's being played. So it's that first fundamental. So if we want it in tune, we can have it the same note or a harmonizing note. Let's just tune it down to an A. So let's see what that is there. Okay, so we need to come up. It's that first fundamental. Yep, we're in the pocket. So and we heard a lot of like interesting delay on our example. So here, let's just pull this out here. So let's get some delay on this. So it seems like this 3/16 is kind of doing it pretty well. And we could actually make the delay a little bit less on the groove, which can sometimes add a little bit of character to the sound. And we can back this off. And we could also add some reverb. Let's turn up the decay time and turn up the wet dry. Yeah, that has more atmosphere to it. So I kind of like what that's doing. I don't really feel like I need to change it much. It's punchy enough, so I don't think I need to add compression to this. I mean, I can make it more punchy, but I kind of like the way that sounds the way it is. And now I just want to make sure to remove below that fundamental frequency so we get rid of any mud. Excellent. So as you can see, you could just keep building your song from this point forward using the loops, and you could cut things the way you like. You could even do things like reverse. So let's grab one of these, right? And we can, let's see, let's just grab like something like this. We'll copy it, and then we can paste it in a strange spot. And then while we've got this selected, just hit the R key and it'll reverse it. And we could actually play with the reverse sound as well. So right? And we could and maybe put a little fade here, so it's just kind of like that there. And then once again, we can make this a little bit more subtle without changing the overall volume, just by coming in here, and we can turn this part down a little bit. Cool. So I think you get where we're going with this. So why don't you try this as the first step in creating your song idea, see how far you can get. And then in the next video, I will give you some advice on how you can start incorporating MIDI to do a couple more experimental things. So use this as like your first step. Once again, if you've never created a song before and you just want to get going with Ableton, this is how I recommend that you would do it. All right, guys, hope this helped. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe and like the video and share it with friends who you think could get some help from this. And I'll talk to you guys most likely tomorrow. Take care.